Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this THJ Sahari Live on a Friday night with Shabnam Palesa Mohammed. I hope everyone is doing well. Wherever you're tuning in from the country, you know the drill. Say hello, tell us where you're tuning in from, how you're doing, what's going on, and what you would like to discuss today in our 1 hour broadcast, including news, views, updates, calls to action, and an interview with THJ director Menzi KaGudu Maseko talking about secret V deals, uh, compensation schemes, and state capture. So it's going to be a very interesting 1 hour packed with information and an interview with Menzi Maseko at 7:30 p.m. Thank you for tuning in. As always, remember to share the broadcast. All right. I see that we are live on our various platforms. Remember to share the broadcast, of course, across your various chats, your emails, your social media, etc., so that people have access to this conversation. We know that we are being shadow banned, so we don't have as many participants as we ordinarily do, which is why we share the broadcast. Tonight, we are on the Sahari Facebook group. We are on the Transformative Health Justice page, and we are on the Sahari YouTube account. So find a way to tune in and make sure you share this broadcast. Let's say hello to a couple of people. Hello, Suzette, Jasmine, good evening. Jean Herborn on the compensation fund. Absolutely on my list, Jean. Thank you very much for bringing that up. Of course, we have to discuss it because there's so little information available and only until Monday to provide comments and input from the public as to what we think about this compensation scheme. But before we begin, of course, remember to share this broadcast. Hit that share button and share it across your various platforms, or copy the link and share it on WhatsApp and Telegram and email and Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. What did I miss? Did I miss anything? Go ahead and share it there so people have access to this conversation. So, of course, we have to start with this compensation fund. Now, just yesterday, government, probably on Wednesday, the Minister of Health announced that there would be a no-fault compensation scheme. This was decided by the Corona Command Council, which is, of course, not an executive decision-making body. They're not supposed to be. But they decided that they would implement a compensation scheme for injuries caused by the V word. Then yesterday, they released a draft bill, a 5-page draft bill. And within that bill and the broadcast messages going around, which don't mention the V word, by the way, the public has 5 days to respond to this draft bill, meaning you have to respond by seemingly Monday, including the weekend. 5 days, not business days, calendar days. So let's start there. What are your thoughts on being given 5 days to respond to a rather expensive and life-changing compensation scheme that affects so many people's lives? Now, we've encouraged our members, of course, Sahari, THJ, to respond, to read this 5-page document and to provide your comments and input. It isn't easy, especially for people who don't have a legal background, to understand what this bill is actually saying. Of course, it's deliberately drafted in a particular type of language that makes it challenging for someone who does not have a legal or related background to understand. But if you're able to read it a few times, section by section, point for point, you may be able to understand exactly what is going on here. Yes, it is a scheme. And of course, this bill has not been translated, as far as I know, into various languages. So if English is not your first language, you're not going to understand what's going on. That's besides the fact that the public only has 5 days to respond to the scheme. So I have written a 3-page response to this, and I could write 10, to this compensation scheme, no fault compensation scheme. And I'll take you through some of the points in this very quickly, but we're also going to circulate this hopefully by tomorrow morning. Got a list of things that I need to attend to it by tomorrow morning, so people can write their own responses in your own words, of course, and submit them via the email address that is being circulated. Of course, the majority of people in our country don't have access to data, don't have smartphones, and will not again be able to respond to this draft bill. The format that I've taken in my response is introductory comments. So we've got 5 introductory comments. Part B is a comment on this bill, section by section. And we've got about 12 points there, followed by some concluding remarks. And that's why it's 3 pages. Like I said, it could be 10, but there's so much more that we actually need to be doing as well. Welcome, Nicolene Richards, Adam Kamda, thank you for joining us. Remember to share this broadcast. We're being shadow banned, so our people don't have access to this conversation, and they desperately need to, because nobody else is going to be telling you exactly what is going on with this compensation scheme and other matters, and how it affects your life and what we need to do about it. So we start off with talking about how this no-fault vaccination compensation scheme is a massive threat to public health in South Africa. The scheme is basically designed, as we've been saying for the last couple of months, to indemnify pharmaceutical companies for any harm, injury, disability, or death that may be caused to you as a result of taking these vaccines, which we've been told are super safe, so we really have nothing to do about, to worry about. But of course, there's a need to create this particular scheme. That's basically what it is. If you are harmed or disabled or you die, what you'll be able to do is what they're saying, is sue yourself. How does that work? Government. Government is where the money will come out of. And then the question is, what is government? Who is government? Is politicians themselves going to be taking out this compensation and paying it to people who are harmed or disabled or dead? No, that comes out of the fiscus of the people. It comes out of our own resources. And so therein lies the problem. The one is that the pharmaceutical companies as the manufacturers are indemnified. Nowhere else is it heard of. If you buy a car and that car is faulty and you need a refund, or you get harmed or injured as a result of manufacturing defaults, you don't sue government for that. You sue the manufacturer of the vehicle. Except when it comes to pharmaceutical companies, it's a whole new range of laws that apply to them, because that is what they enforce upon countries, and that is what spineless governments actually agree to. Welcome also to lawyer Jennifer Amy Stoller. All right. So we're being held hostage by companies that have a history and a record of fraud, corruption, racketeering, and harm. I get tired of saying it, but we need to do the research on the track records of these various companies. They're not small, minor infringements. They're fraud, corruption, racketeering, and harm. Pre-existing track records, and now governments still decided, hey, we'll do business with them. Birds of a feather, I suppose. And so instead of taking this nation into confidence about the exact implications of the scheme, there's now a scheme we can't afford on top of the injections, which the ministers have outlaid, 10 billion for? And on top of COVID corruption, of course, that's going to enslave us for generations. What does that mean? More loans from the IMF and the World Bank and the whole pyramid scheme that is going to enslave our people for generations. So of course, it means that government is captured by Big Pharma. It's a question we've raised before. This government sees nothing wrong, doesn't think it's captured, which is why certain ministers are being forced to sign indemnity agreements in their private capacities. This is how you've allowed yourself to become captured. This is how you've allowed our country and our nation to become captured as well. So here's this bill announced on the 15th. And they're giving us an insulting 5 days to respond for those who can access the bill, for those who have data, for those who English is their first language and have some working knowledge of how to understand the legalese. And the government knows that this farce of 5 days is not going to withstand a test of the courts. The courts are not going to say, yeah, we think 5 days is reasonable for a matter of this massive impact. So certainly there are going to be organizations who will go to court to challenge it. And let's put it on record that Transformative Health Justice is very willing to stand alongside any group and organization that wants to go to court on the matter of the problems, the massive problems with this compensation scheme. And then we talk about matters of legality, right? So I'm talking about our response that we'll be sending to government. One is a blurring of lines between the Corona Command Council and Cabinet. Cabinet's supposed to be the one that has executive responsibility to make decisions. And so therefore, the legality of this very bill is drawn into question. And of course, there was a High Court ruling last year that a significant number of regulations in terms of the Disaster Management Act are irrational and unlawful. Which means a lot of the laws that followed since then are invalid to a certain extent. And of course, there's no emergency need given our recovery rate. There's no emergency need to make this kind of decision and give us 5 days to respond. There simply isn't. It is absolutely unconscionable. And in any case, these pharmaceutical companies may not even deliver the products, right? But we've set up a scheme through which the pyramid is going to benefit. And then very importantly, in February, some of us may remember that the WHO announced a no-fault vaccine injury scheme through COVAX that South Africa is signed up to. And it will be funded by an extra charge on vaccines. Now, if we're part of COVAX, and the WHO announced already that there is a no-fault injury scheme through COVAX, why is there a need to establish another scheme? 2 schemes? Nobody's talking about it? Certainly a subject for debate as well. Welcome, Abdul Jabbar Chand. Thank you for joining us. Remember to share the broadcast. We're being shadow banned and censored by big tech, big media, big social media. So it's our responsibility to make sure that people have access to this conversation. Make sure you hit that share button, share it across your platforms, or copy the link and share it in other platforms as well. Then we go into the specifics of the various sections contained within this draft bill. And there's about 12 points that we've made. And you'll be able to see them once this document is circulated. You'll be able to read the comments that we make, starting with section 92 and ending on section 96. Various problems within these particular, and I'll run through them very, very quickly. First of all, we've never seen the agreements with these pharmaceutical companies, so we never consented. Non-disclosure agreements in matters of health are not ethical and they're not binding. The public is expected to fund compensation, which for injuries by these companies, which are heavily subsidized. Let's admit it, they're heavily subsidized for research and development. But on top of that, they don't want any liability for injuries from their products. Then we go into the fact that certain directives in this bill have not been even thought of, decided, declared yet. For example, how to report injuries. What are the requirements relating to the administration of the scheme, right? None of it is there in the bill, but we've got 5 days to respond, which makes absolutely no sense. Let's take a couple of comments here before I proceed with the actual substance of this bill. Let's see, Helene van der Merwe. Hi, my friend. Verishka's tagging some people. Excellent. 5 days is not fair to grassroots communities. Government is only reaching a select few. That's their intention, isn't it? That is exactly their intention. This is no accident. This is another instance of them subverting a constitutional democracy by pushing through legislation at a time where people are otherwise occupied or don't understand the language or don't have access to data and not giving people enough time. Then we go on to talk about this adjudication panel comprising of experts, zero mention of, all right, something wrong with this video. I can see what's going on here. Zero mention of any civil society representation on their adjudication panel. Then, of course, compensation is only for severe injuries resulting in permanent or significant injury or serious harm to a person's health, other damage, or death. None of these have been defined. Significant, permanent, serious harm, none of it is made clear. And of course, given the fact that only 1% of people who are injured actually report via various systems, there's a startling number of people who are unable to work after taking these injections. So, of course, they lose out on income, in addition to medical and legal expenses, and of course, pain and suffering. It's not clear whether any of that is going to be covered at all. Then, of course, Section 93.3 states that injury or death must be directly related to the vaccine. That again becomes a problem. There are people who are already injured in our country and whose injuries are being suppressed. They are being suppressed. We are getting those reports. There are doctors and nurses who are telling us about injuries that nobody is reporting. The government's not talking about it. I haven't seen anything in media. If I'm wrong, please provide us with a link so that we can acknowledge media that's actually telling us what's going on. Jean Herborn says she can't see any comments. Yep, that's exactly what's going on. This is how nervous they are of the power of the people. Basically, that's it. All right, again, in Section 93.4, all of the information contained there is not available, who's eligible, what injuries are covered, which vaccines are covered, types of claims that may be made, your requirements and procedures, the period in which your respective claims may be instituted. None of that is available. The amounts and structure of the scheme is not determined. Claimants may not, you cannot go to a court until the scheme has adjudicated. And God knows how long that's going to take. I mean, bearing in mind that matters involving children, housing, the homeless, the road accident funds take years to finalize. So while you're waiting for some compensation from the scheme, you can't go to the court. You have to wait. What happens? People die. Goes on to talk about what the indemnity actually means, that it's a blanket indemnity and that there's no public representation to decide how long the scheme actually exists. And then, of course, some concluding comments, which you'll see when we start circulating. Very, very important, people. Very important for you to make your voice heard. Write your comments on this bill and what it means and what the impact actually is. And make sure you object to this ludicrous insult of 5 days being given to the public to comment on this compensation for injuries scheme. Helene Shanamarva, I think we should be taking the government on our Health and Safety Act. Sandy Wills, thanks for explaining the Shabnam. You are most welcome, Sandy. Absolutely welcome for that. All right, so make sure you comment. It doesn't need to be 3 pages. It can be half a page. It can be maybe one, a paragraph. It can be 1 page. Whatever it is, make your voice heard. And when you send that email to government, please be sure to copy in info@thj-africa.org.za. So that's our MPC. So we'll have a copy of the complaints and comments that you are sending through on this no-fault indemnity scheme, which is, of course, directly related to, very importantly, it's an amendment to finance regulations, is what it is. So it's massive. We don't have the money. Our budget for health decreases by 1% every year. 1% is massive. Where is the money going to come from? Already, I can guarantee you they're planning to borrow more money and enslave us even further, and then the prices of everything, including petrol, goes up. What a scheme. What a scheme it is. Yes, we do indeed have a petition. Thank you, Varushka, for sharing that. And the petition is called Make All Vaccine Deals Public in South Africa. You'll find it on the change.org platform. Please sign and share. This is a human rights issue. On the vitamin I, we've reached almost 60,000 signatures. Absolutely brilliant, right? On this one, which just started, I think, yesterday, Make All Vaccine Deals Public in South Africa, we've got over 250 signatures. Make sure you share it. You have a right to know what is in those agreements. We have a right to know, without which there is no valid consent. Jean Herborn, so now the individual needs to prove it's the injection that caused the injury. Absolutely absurd, of course. And the experience in other countries where people are not, people don't know how to prove the injury or don't have the money for medical reports and lawyers, that the compensation rate is under 50%. It's under 50%. You see the problems in this. And of course, the rollout has started. But if you're listening to experts like Professor Dolores Cahill, Dr. Mike Yaden, Geert van der Bosch, there's going to be problems. There are already problems. Like I said, we are getting reports, and not only us, there are reports circulating of frontline workers who have been hurt, damaged, harmed, or died. But it's censored, heavily, heavily censored. And of course, we need to have a proper reporting system, but you can't trust a system that's run by government, can you? Of course not, because government's not actually in charge, and that's why you can't trust their systems. SAPRA, of course, there have been some complaints made to SAPRA about adverse effects, and we've had a doctor who told us that SAPRA just basically ignored those reports of adverse effects to frontline workers. Why? Conflict of interest. Bought and sold the country. All right, that's a couple of items in terms of news, in terms of views. We're saying to doctors and pharmacists to be brave in terms of vitamin I. We get contacted by desperate partners and family members saying, my loved one is in hospital. The doctor does not want to treat them with vitamin I. They're saying there's not enough evidence. Unfortunately, these healthcare workers who have not done the research have been brainwashed by our friends in mainstream media, many of whom are funded by pharmaceutical companies and affiliates. They've forgotten their Hippocratic oath, perhaps. They're worried about being stigmatized for using an over 40-year-old Nobel Prize winning medicine. And the patients' lives are actually at risk. All doctors, if you have a request from a patient regarding vitamin I, you've got to process a Section 21 application. You actually can't refuse. Go and look at Section 37 of the Helsinki Declaration. We believe in you. You need to be brave. You have no other option to save lives. You have no other option. And this is a safe medicine. Sandy Wool, so adverse effects have been reported in SA. Yes, Sandy, they are being reported. It's just that we're not seeing them in the mainstream space. And of course, not just not being reported, but there's just blanket denial of what's going on. Shocking stories, actually. Absolutely shocking stories. And we have forwarded such information to media platforms that we trust, because we believe that they will do the right thing. And we know that more healthcare workers are going to step forward and say, I've been harmed. And we need to stand with them. We absolutely need to stand with them. Censorship is a huge problem. I mean, YouTube has started taking down accounts all over the place. I don't know how much longer we'll see some of our favorites YouTube accounts like the FLCCC. I know EBMC, Dr. Tess Laurie's YouTube account, they can't post for the next 3 months. I think FLCCC is still up. Dr. Bean has had his videos demonetized by YouTube. Got to find alternative platforms. It's a chance for us to move away from these big tech monopolies. Same with Facebook. Renata Advocat, who's one of our admins, approved 700 member requests today on the Sahari THJ group. 700. That number of 73,000 didn't move up at all. In our estimate, we're probably sitting at 200,000 members, but you can't see it in the ticker or the counter that Facebook. Why would they do that? Why would they do that? Sandy Wills, you're quite right. It is criminal that adverse effects are not being reported or being made public. And yes, actually, some of them are being gagged. Some of the nurses are being told you can't claim from COIDA if you don't take the injection, or you may lose your job if you speak out, or they're being bribed not to speak out about what they're experiencing. It's going on. It's going on around the world. Why would it not be happening in South Africa as well? It makes absolutely no sense. It doesn't. In terms of updates, the People's Medicine campaign continues. We're busy working on updating our information flyers to include the very latest position, translated into various languages. Please print and distribute these flyers so people know that they have an option. All right. If you cannot print and distribute them on your own, please donate towards us, towards our organization, towards our movements, so that we can have those flyers printed and courier them around the country so that people who are willing to do distribution are able to do so. Please. For that, you need to contact Saskia Langeveld on sahari.action2@gmail.com. And in terms of Set Ivy Free, our animation, we've translated it into French, Italian, Spanish, German, isiZulu, which I am going to show you during the interview with Menzi Maseko, which is coming up in about 3 minutes' time. We'll be showing you the isiZulu version of Set IV Free. And of course, our mailing lists. If you contribute or volunteer towards activities, you will be added to our mailing list, where you will get all the information that you need in one place in your email. All right, we have a limited number of contacts there, 2,000 contacts only. So what we've decided is that it's the most active members who will be added to those mailing lists. In other words, you volunteer or you donate or you contribute your skills towards our movement, you will be added to those mailing lists. Comment from Deborah Moller. Thank you so much, Shabnam Palesa. Mohammed Saskia Langveld helped us big time. I'm so happy to hear that. Twitter is, of course, massive censorship as well. People being banned and restricted, including Marybeth Pfeiffer. If you watched last week's edition of The People's Voice, we had 3 journalists, Marybeth Pfeiffer, Biasan Subramani, and Mariam Mia, talking about censorship. Marybeth was, of course, banned from Twitter as well. What's going on? What happened to freedom of speech? Baptist Prella also joining us, an attorney there. Welcome, Baptist. And of course, our website, which is looking absolutely amazing and will be launched very, very shortly. It's almost ready and it's brilliant. You're going to absolutely love it. And we'll be using a lot more of our website and our mailing list to communicate information than we do social media going forward. So it's very important for us to start mixing up the mediums that we use. Calls to action: volunteer, get involved, contribute, share your skills and resources, sign and share the 2 petitions, get onto Telegram. Super important for you to do that. Get onto Telegram. We've got a national group, we've got provincial groups, and we've got working groups. Tons of useful information there. And lots of shadow banning on Facebook, of course. So remember to change the notifications on the Facebook group. Click on the 3 dots top right and change your notification settings from highlights to all. Then only will you be able to see all of our content. Absolutely insane. What kind of an Orwellian dystopia are we actually living in? We've got 2 shows coming up this weekend. Remember, tomorrow, 7 p.m., we've got This Is Africa. We're talking to Kesan Raman about the mental health impact of parental alienation, massive issue in our country. We're talking to Ibrahim Sheikh about the fact that Uhud still does not have any water. Whose fault is that? And in the last segment of our show, we're talking to Ahmed Mansour Sheikh Imam and Barend Ace about why we need to join forces on IVM as well as the secret vax deal. So remember, 7 p.m. tomorrow. Then on Sunday, 3 to 4 p.m. this time, because it is the fasting month, 3 to 4 p.m. on Salam Media, we will be hosting Dr. Pierre Corey, Dr. Tess Laurie, and Dr. Evie Rapiti. What is the impact of censorship on science? What is the role of Big Pharma, WHO, regulators, and media? Right? What needs to change in public health? How will dissenting medical voices be heard? And what is the role of civil society? Why is it so important? So remember to tune in and share those posters. We are ready now for Menzi KaGudu Maseko. And he will be joining us shortly to have this conversation about the secret vax deals, the compensation schemes, and the implications for state capture. A comment here from Marina Mielberg-Smith: censorship is so frustrating, to put it mildly. Absolutely is. It's been creeping up on us, though, hasn't it? And Marina also saying, so looking forward to Sunday. Absolutely, Marina, but we can expect censorship there as well. So remember to share the poster. When these conversations start, tomorrow, This Is Africa, and Sunday, The People's Voice, share those links, share those broadcasts, fight the system. Rana Tirza Naidu says, me too. All right, let's try and get hold of Menzi Maseko. We are ready. Link in. And he will be joining us, of course. Menzi is the one of the directors of our NPC, Transformative Health Justice. And he will be joining us in conversation. Now, at the end of the conversation, we'll be screening the isiZulu version of the promo called Set IV Free. And there he is. Menzi Maseko, welcome to the THJ Sahari Live on a Friday night.
Greetings. There's a bit of greetings everyone, but there was a bit of an echo there, or a repeat.
Oh. There's an echo, yeah. No, we're having issues as always.
It's not really an echo. It's like you are repeating everything you've already said. So I'm not sure what to do because as I'm speaking, you're speaking over my voice. So
okay, so there's a delay. There's a delay in the audio.
There's a delay. Yes.
Yeah. All right. We'll have to figure it out, Menzi. This is how it goes when you're an activist that's threatening the system.
But otherwise, everything is audible.
Everything is audible. All right, let's get this conversation on the road. Menzi Maseko, of course, an activist, a man of many, many talents, a cultural advocate as well, indigenous knowledge systems expert, traditional and natural healing advocate, and, of course, a director of transformative health justice. You've been following, of course, what's going on in this ridiculous Orwellian time that we're experiencing in terms of our most fundamental right, which is the right to health.
All right, let's get this conversation on the road. Menzi Maseko, of course. Can you hear that? The man of many, many talents.
I can. Where is that coming from?
I have no idea what to do. So I want to speak and respond to you, but it's like the time lag. It's like we're in a time machine. We're in a time warp. You've been following, of course, what's going
on. Can you mute whatever the audio is, whatever is audible?
So I'm gonna, maybe it's my earphones, I'm not sure. So
you've got to put your phone on silent.
No, the phone. I'm not on the phone. I'm using my computer.
Is the computer on silent?
But it's like, let me just try something. I'm doing something else with my phone. I'm looking at some information that I need to divulge here.
All right. While Menzi is figuring out what's going on there.
Okay. I'm working on it. The phone is on silent. The phone is muted. Yeah.
Is the computer on silent?
No, the computer cannot be on silent because I need to hear you.
That's why you need the earpiece.
No, I can hear you. I can hear you clearly. I took off the earphones so that I can actually hear you properly. But let me just try again something.
Yeah.
It's a bit chaotic. I'm very prepared.
You fixed it.
The computer.
I think you fixed it, Menzi.
All right. I think I fixed it. I hope.
Yes.
Yeah.
A couple of comments here. Benedicta Bergman, thank you for all your hard work and for fighting for human rights. Thank you, Benedicta. Jean says we can hear you. Sandy Will says, hello, Menzi. And Jean Herborn, they are listening to us. Ha, ha, ha. All right. Menzi, let's start here.
We are back on track.
Yes, we are back on track, Menzi. So today we're talking with you about the secret vax deals, the no-fault injury compensation schemes, and what that means in terms of state capture. So let's start here, Menzi. How do you define state capture? And is it a new form of economic warfare?
Well, it is, as I was reading through some of the questions that we're discussing now, I realized that the new might not fit very well. It is not a new form of warfare, but the enemies of the people are becoming even more cleverer. They're becoming a little bit more trickier and more cunning. While it is not new, because sadly, governments which are supposed to be representative of the people, which are voted on by the people, we who do deep research into the deep web and into what's happening with governance since the inception, since even before the Industrial Revolution, we realize that governments have been captured by corporations for a very long time. So if you are captured by profit-making organizations, by banks, for example. It's been fluctuating. Sometimes it's the banks, and sometimes when the banks fall out of favor, it's either the mining companies or it's the energy companies. In the 2000s, it was things like Monsanto. It's still going on. It's multiple layers of state capture. But to call it state capture, we must be very careful also so that we do not fall into these trending. Let me take off my glasses. I'm disturbed by the light. When we call it state capture, people must be very clear that we are not talking about the Guptas and Zuma and Bosasa and Ramaphosa only. Contextually, of course, if you want to speak about South Africa, that's the playing field. But we have to question everything. Frantz Fanon, the Martinican Algerian revolutionary writer and psychologist, told us that if you are a revolutionary, you must question everything, right? So if you do not question everything, you will always be misled. You'll be misled by people who actually tell you that they are serving you, yet they are serving different interests. So in this context of the vaccines, it is obvious that old companies that have been creating vaccines and have been charged for fraud and for murder and for making people sick in every single continent you can think of, they are now saying that the cure is in their hand. There's no one else who can speak about a cure or a vaccine or any kind of preventative measure, prophylaxis, whatever. No one else but us has the power to give governments, to capture governments and tell them, this is the program, this is what you're supposed to do. So it's a very big web. And all I'm just saying, Shabnam, is that it is nothing new. It is not new. It's just that the context changes. It's the same game, but different players. Sometimes the players slightly changed. It's actually haven't changed very much. But I don't want to digress and go there, but let's just focus on this one, this particular issue.
No, it's a very important point that you make. This form of economic terror is not new. It's been going on for centuries. They just find more sophisticated ways and complicated ways to make us dependent on them, right? Well, subtle if you're not aware. To those of us that are, it ain't so subtle. So it's a very important point that you've actually made there, Menzi. What do you know? What are your thoughts on the nefarious activities of Big Pharma, including what they're doing in Argentina?
Yeah, well, what's being done in Argentina, I was reading about it earlier today. It's actually what was done to India. I read something. Let me just make a parallel example before we return strictly to the Argentinian story. I read, I forgot the title of the book, but by Vedanta Shiva, one of the great revolutionaries of the 20th and 21st century. It was speaking about Monsanto, but also linking Coca-Cola and Microsoft in the capture of Indian, not just the whole government, but municipalities. How various companies would actually go in and will infiltrate municipalities, provinces, and try to change local laws, local farming practices, local ways of fetching water. Coca-Cola basically is responsible for ridding many provinces in India and surrounding areas of natural spring water. They will take the natural spring water and sell it back to the people. They will take the waters from the river and sell it back as sugared water, Coca-Cola, basically, with other drugs added in it, and sell it back to the people. So what I'm trying to explain is that what's happening in Argentina is something that is repeating itself even in Peru. In Peru, there were various forms of economic hitmen, whereby they go in. What they're doing in Argentina now is go in and steal and buy out politicians. But now it's not even like under the table kind of buying out. It's not like a briefcase under a table in in a dark bar. They go straight to the legislators and basically, what's the word? I'm trying to look for this word. It's not bamboozle. I'm looking for it's where you it's not blackmail. English sometimes runs away, but it's like you're really blackmailing governments to take your deal. It's an ultimatum. They gave
Yes.
Argentina an ultimatum that if you want the vaccine, you have to cede your sovereignty. Basically, your
Yeah.
sovereignty now
That's
belongs
it.
to us. Your laws, we can change your laws. We can basically manipulate your constitution. You lose your sovereignty for the vaccine. But basically, you are selling your country for something that you don't even know that it actually can do anything to cure COVID. Cure, maybe it's a very hard word. It's a place. I'm just using that word loosely. You are
Yes.
saying, give me your country, I will give you the elixir for the malady, which is the pandemic or the epidemic of COVID. So basically, what they're doing to Argentina, I think it's an experiment so that they can go and do it in other countries. I like the fact that Argentina is resisting the tactics of Pfizer, trying to basically buy out their sovereignty. The resistance is a good sign for other countries to watch and see what Argentina is doing, because Argentina has, they always go into countries that are having some kind of economic downturn. I will not be surprised if they
Right.
go to Greece next. And if you look at it in the South African context, it's very obvious. South Africa has been downgraded. I don't know how many times. Some even that downgrade, that economic downgrade, is actually a part of the manufacturing of consent. They create a crisis so that they can come in and try and solve that crisis using their own ways, their
Yeah.
own principles. The country's voters, legislators basically have no power. That's what's happening
That
in
is
Argentina.
that is exactly it. I mean, they said to Argentina, give us your embassies, your military bases. Why would you want a country's military bases? Your
That's
embassies,
capture.
your
That's
reserve
capture.
banks.
Hmm.
It's capture.
Well, if you speak of
And this
South Africa's Reserve Bank, we have no Reserve Bank to speak of. For the past 5 years, it's all been revealed. Well, for some people, it's 5 years. For some of us, we've been knowing this for 20 years. That our Reserve Bank is not South Africa's Reserve Bank. It belongs to foreign companies that basically are milking South Africa for its resources. This happens throughout the
exactly.
continent, by the way, but we won't get into that. There is no independence yet
Yeah.
from the imperial powers. Now they're using the vaccine, not just the vaccine. They're using the COVID epidemic to basically continue their scheme to survive, basically.
Absolutely. I mean, the use of the guise of corporations to continue the capture of countries'
Mm,
resources
mm,
and sovereignty. Rana Tirza Naidu,
mm,
they're selling their people. It's sad indeed. It is a sale, Rana, because political campaigns require funding. And those that fund your
mm.
political campaigns get to decide what happens in your country. Deborah Moller, I
Secrecy.
am known as a person, and secrecy. Deborah Moller, I'm known as a person who can talk a lot, but I am left speechless. Deborah, that is the beginning of the awakening. So we're glad you're on this journey with us. Remember to share this conversation. We're being shadow banned. We normally have hundreds of people joining us, but that's how scared they are of the power of the people.
Mm.
Menzi, what are your thoughts on these non-disclosure agreements in these injection deals?
Well, the non-disclosure agreement, first of all, it's illegal. Let's just be very clear about that. It's illegal because it's unconstitutional. There is nothing in the constitution that they can use as a defense for pushing it through. It's like, I'm not sure if I can mention another channel in our channel. When I was interviewed on ENCA once upon a time last year, sometime around mid COVID, they were asked the anchor. They asked me a question about Ubuntu. She asked whether South South African politicians specifically, are they practicing Ubuntu in the way that they are dealing with the lockdown specifically and with COVID in general. And my answer was that no, they are not practicing Ubuntu. But the reason why they're not practicing Ubuntu is because they are not led by their conscience and they are not led by the constitution. They are controlled by people who are controlling them, who are basically the conglomerates, the multinational and pharmaceutical companies. So this non-disclosure deal, I think you were speaking about it earlier. I think you basically explained everything. For people who were listening, I don't know why I need to repeat anything, because you put it quite clearly that it's illegal. It should actually be resisted.
Absolutely. Now, there's a lot of sort of liberal discourse going on, which are saying these agreements are normal, nothing to worry about. And it's the most weird, bizarre kind of attitude for other civil society organizations to be taking. How can you be okay with a non-disclosure agreements with companies that have been caught committing all of these crimes? You have no idea what the terms of these agreements are, and you're okay with private agreements. You don't even know what's the ingredients of these injections. You don't know anything. How can you be okay with it?
Well, as you said, you use the word liberal, in what's happening. Also, there's a problem. I have to address this. Originally, there wasn't anything really wrong with liberalism. But what has happened with liberals, especially in the civil society space, is that they too, just like the politicians, have been captured. But now they are not captured probably by money, because they may not be motivated by money, but sometimes they are, because people who fund them are the same multinational companies to pretend that they are fighting for the people, yet they're just fighting to keep their building on and to pay their rates and all that. So there's a whole lot of NGOs that exist merely just to divert people's attention from real information, from the truth. So they actually make liberalism actually, they make it evil. Let me put it that way. It's the same question that when you speak about democracy, a whole lot of African people, I must say, they are suspicious of the word of democracy. That is because in our experience, we have not experienced a true democracy. We have not experienced people power. The reason why we do not experience people power, because somehow we have not been empowered enough to use knowledge wisely. What do I mean by that? It's the same issue about transparency. We call our organization Transformative Health Justice, right? But a person is, in order to be able to partake in the transformation, you have to get the right information. If you are still depending on mainstream media for your information, if you're depending on what you read in magazines that are owned by a group of few families, if you're depending on the news that are owned by people that we know have been basically disrupting government from their democratic programs. Let me put a quick example before we return. The African National Congress has something called the National Democratic Revolution. If you read the NDP, sorry, the National Development Plan from 2007 to 2017 until now, some of the principles, some of the things that are written there are good. They are supposed to take the country to the next level of development, but they cannot be put to action because each and every time the will of the people is diverted by the will of the haves, of the 1% that control basically everything on the economic sphere. So it is very unfortunate that a lot of civil society groups, instead of being the bridge for the people, so that they can feed people the right information, so people can use the information to transform their lives and achieve justice in all spheres, whether it's health, whether it's in any sphere, food, manufacturing, anything. Having a right to say, okay, you are raising the petrol price. What informs this hike in the petrol price? You are raising the bread price. What informs this? Most of the time, people look at petitions and they think, this thing is useless. But petitions are very important because that is where one of the platforms whereby you can actually have a voice. Otherwise, generally, we do not have a voice. Things are imposed on us and we cannot do anything about it unless we have information in our hand. You have the right information in your hand,
Absolutely.
then you can be able to have a democracy. Without that, democracy is a sham.
Absolutely.
And liberalism is
It
actually
is a
the
sham.
worst sham. Yeah,
It is a sham.
it's a
All of it.
sham.
The constitution is a
Plain
paper
and a sham.
tiger. It means nothing. Couple of
Yes,
comments here. Varushka Soma Mendat says, captured state, but not a captured people. We will be heard.
yes.
Rana Tirza Naidu says, you bet. Marina Muhlberg-Smith, absolutely believe more people are becoming aware now. And that's the other function of petitions. Besides speaking truth to power, the content of petitions and the conversations that it generates is that education and awareness that we need. Marina also said, I believe a lot of people are seeing these things happen, have been quiet for fear of losing their jobs, but are hopefully now realizing that they, meaning we all, may all lose everything if they don't speak up. Stronger civil groups may help them to speak up. We have to speak up. With non-disclosure agreements, we don't know who our reserve bank belongs to, our military,
Mm-mm.
our embassy,
Who finds the
our fiscus.
politician? Our
Who
president
funds the
basically has been
politicians?
dancing around the question, which has been asked since last year. He's been dancing around the question of who funded his campaign. You know, he says he has a right to keep the names secret. You know, how in a democracy? How in a place
And why?
in a constitutional democracy? How and why? And then it has arisen that many of the ones that funded him are also part of the pharmaceutical companies that are colluding to make sure. Well, basically, they are gambling with the people's lives, saying, "Okay, you have to have. You're going to take this vaccine, or you're going to take that vaccine. Oh, this vaccine is no longer good enough, and then you must take this vaccine." It's basically a gamble with people's lives. Why? Because information is murky. It's all gray. Like you were saying earlier, I don't know who you were speaking to. You were speaking to the matter of the same no fault injury thingy. You were saying that the way it is written in such the language, the legal language, the legal jargon is so intricate that an ordinary South African will not be able to understand what's going on there. You need a lawyer just
No.
to read information that is supposed to be, standard information for everyone. You know, so it's
Yeah.
obfuscation.
Absolutely. A comment from Jean Herb on Menzi, but people in South Africa don't know this information that is shared here. And it's even censored now as you speak. This must be made known to our citizens and the residents of our country. Everything is imposed and nobody is having a choice. That's where we come in, Jean. During the conversation, we share the content. After the broadcast, we share the content. We use their platforms, but we also develop our own methodologies. So, in respect of
Okay,
these,
can I ask a question? Can
sure.
I ask a question? I'm just slightly
Mm.
returning to the Argentinian situation. How is it that a vaccine sold in a time of epidemic of a pandemic is so commodified that it's only rich countries in the north who are basically they also fighting for access. But for me, that fighting for access by the rich countries it's a drama. It's a created
Yes.
crisis. It's a drama to show the other countries, to show us in the southern hemisphere. Uh, 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 Somehow, it's a kind of like a prestige thing because they want to get it. Nancy, we must want to get it. It's like a trickle down thing. So it's a
Yeah,
drama to create
exactly.
some kind of confusion. So, oh, we also need it. We also want it. But real news is revealing that on the ground, a lot of people are resisting. But beyond the people who have been resisting even before, there are cases of deaths and clotting and just a whole lot of mess happening from Germany to Spain to France to everywhere. So how are we scrambling for a commodified vaccine from people that we know have been criminals since the beginning. They are profit driven, and they're not just only profit driven, they are blood driven. If there are no sick people, they cannot exist. If people are eating healthy,
Right.
living healthy lives, or better informed, these companies will not exist. So why are we even grappling with them? Why are we even trying to be like them?
It's such an important point you made, Menzi. Such an important point because, it's crisis capitalism, as people like Naomi Klein have written about. It's crisis. In the minutes of crisis is when the rich will get richer because they're predators and right, shock and awe. They're predators and parasites, and it's the capitalism or crony capitalism, let's just say, for those of us that have these debates about whether what we're going through is communism or capitalism. I know that debate happens a lot. But this is, let's call it crony capitalism, where they dramatize demand. So it drives up a demand for supply.
And they lie.
And that's the constant.
Blatantly.
Yes. He's a liar.
Sorry to disturb you. Please go on. Go on.
Yeah.
Just reminding me of the fact that someone was actually called out by the people for lying several times to the president. Fauci lied to President Trump several times. He even came up and apologized and said, the infection rate is 86 towards 90%. But he had been told by the doctors who were on the field that no, the infection rate is about 50 to 60. He went and added his own percentages and went and told the nation. So these are the people that we are depending on for the truth. Wow. How dumb are we?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's the same like the WHO. We believe whatever they say, even when they lie, even when the facts on the ground completely contradict what it is that they're saying, even when we know the PCR test is fatally flawed. We need to open our eyes and open up the eyes of other people. Barushka Soma Memdak, this political dispensation is cursed, evil, and selfish. We need to look at these politicians in the eye and tell them that we will not tolerate their wrongful deeds. Marina Muhlberg-Smith, and when it falls, they will be on the wrong side. We will remember their names and the names of their descendants. But just in terms of locally, Johnson & Johnson, Menzi, said to the Minister of Health and probably of Finance and Trade and Industry, that unless you give us a letter supporting Aspen for its investment into all of these injections, etc., we won't give you the injections. What on earth? And I can guarantee you these ministers would have signed it.
Well, on the pretext that Aspen is a local company. But I've been looking at that. How local is Aspen in terms of its? Well, I understand that it is a company that started at a place where I used to work. In fact, at Greyville, just behind Greyville Racecourse. I was listening to the CEO the other day, and I'm thinking to myself, like, it is local, really? What does local mean when you are actually, everything that you sell is actually not local? They are, I don't know if they're like a compounding company or what. They're kind of like a company that is like a bridge for overseas companies to push their business in the local sphere. It's kind of like a front. That's the way I look at it. And one of our dear president's funders, by the way, biggest funder of the Ramaphosa campaign, Aspen is one of them. So
and then he goes on a field visit.
That's money laundering, though. But it's laundering. The money does not necessarily come from Aspen. The money comes from that guy that I don't even want to mention his name, of Microsoft and the other owners of the pharmaceutical companies. No, they come from there and then they are washed. It's money laundering through local companies, so-called local companies. So that letter, it's basically, again, part of the drama to create an impression that there is some kind of diplomacy going on. There is some kind of dialogue. Everything is basically on the table. There's nothing to hide. Yet we see through them because history has taught us that we cannot basically be so gullible as to take everything that comes from these authorities as the truth. must investigate for ourselves.
Absolutely. If they tell you it's daytime, go and look for yourself. The same guy whose
Make
name can't be
sure
mentioned now wants to dim out the sun. This
he's
is the
not only
guy
doing that,
that's
Shabna.
leading
This,
public
this
healthcare.
culprit is not only doing that. I want us to return
Yes,
to the questions, but I want to mention this part. This issue of him buying farms,
yes,
buying like hectares and hectares of farms, not only in the United States, but also just below the United States in places like Mexico. It's another way of making sure that his footprint is firmly on the ground, and that even when he passes away, even if it dies, the evil schemes that he has set in motion on the earth, they must continue. Because, some people basically, they don't use their heart to think or their mind. They use their stomach. So there will be people who catch the bait and continue to perpetuate his depopulation agenda on the earth. You mess with the food of the people, you're basically messing with the life of the people. I won't even go into the issue of the sun. That's like, for me, it's a travesty. I won't even. I'm praying about that one, and I'm not praying peaceful
yeah, it's
prayers. I'm praying
insane.
warrior prayers. I'm swinging fire arrows at him. But that's my secret. Don't worry about that.
Righteousness shall rule and
Righteousness
reign.
will
But
conquer
your
him.
point about absolutely, but your point about farmland and land in general is so powerful because if, he or she that controls food controls the world. He
Also
or she
control the
that's
seeds.
poisoning the food
Mm,
controls the seed, right? You're quite
mm,
right. Vandana Shiva, go and have a look at her work. She's one of that guy's biggest enemies, and
mm.
rightfully so. In terms of this now this compensation scheme, which people have got 5 days to respond to, our members are responding. Comrade Menzi, Diane last has written an email to that address that you've got a right to comment on the scheme, and she's got some questions. Where is the money for the fund sourced from? Define injection injury. Who decides what constitutes an injury? How long after an injection can one claim? Who carries the burden of medical costs while you're waiting for your claim to be reviewed? In the case of a permanent impairment, who carries the cost of treatment and ongoing treatment? Would you only be able to go to public institutions that are often under-resourced and understaffed if you've been hurt? How does one arrive to a sufficient monetary amount for the health or worst case scenario death of a human being? How would government ensure that the fund is not defrauded or bankrupted, right? Right? Because we've got no confidence in this government, given all of the tender fraud and motorbike ambulances and PPE corruption,
And no
and
one,
out
no
of
one is
what
held accountable.
necessity?
No
No
one
one
is
is
held
held
accountable.
accountable.
So it's relevant questions that she is asking because um, it's a matter now of reading in between the lines. On this scheme, there needs to be some kind of what do they call it? The terms. What do you call it? Terms and recommendations. What do they call it? What are the terms and conditions that are required, basically, by the public in terms of public disclosure? Uh, we need to have, you know, it's just that these things are expensive. We need to be equipped with lawyers when it comes to dealing with our government, So my question to this, my answer to that is like, can we have a body of legal eagles who are actually standing in the gap for people? I'm using a Christian term, a prayer warrior term, when they say there needs to be people who stand in the gap. We need people who stand in the gap between government and the people, because government is really supposed to be for the people, but it's been proven many times that we basically are operating with people who are mafia, who are mafia dons. There's no one clean. Basically, they even say themselves, everyone has their skeletons in the closet. You know, so
Small
we really
Nyana.
just need legal, yeah, smaller nyana skeletons. They are not small skeletons. They are rotting bodies in their cars. The point I'm
Yes,
making, though, is that we need a stronger civil society. We need lawyers and other civil society bodies who are honest to work with THJ to support us, not just in the issue of on the Sahari campaign or for ivermectin. We need organizations that can support us in the things that we cannot do. Tina, we are here rallying the people to access the people's medicine and to access the truth and justice. But there are certain things that we cannot do. So it's imperative that we have conscientious objectors, people who are standing for righteousness, who can actually work with us.
Absolutely. A call out there from Menzi Maseko. And I know there were some lawyers who also tuned in earlier, so I'm sure they're listening to what you were saying. And the last question Diane asked is, why has a fund not been established to explore other less invasive interventions at the very least until all South Africans are willing and or able to be safely injected without serious adverse effects? South Africa could well be pioneering a non-invasive, more therapeutic approach. And of course, we're talking about medicines like vitamin I.
We have plenty chemists, we have plenty pharmacists, we have plenty people who are qualified to do all these things that we are actually obtaining at a very high price, at a very high cost from overseas, So I don't know, it boggles my mind. I don't have the answer to that. I really don't have the answer to that. Things are being
we just follow the money and you find the answer.
Yeah, you follow the money, but then at the same time, once you find the answer, we are here as THJ trying to make sure that once we know the answers, we rally enough people to say no, to say no to these things being imposed upon us. That's all. That's all we need. Strengthen numbers.
I think we're reaching the point where we might need to occupy the buildings and platforms and spaces of some of these decision makers. Abdullah Dino Haq says, it's a must, says, Mr. Menzi, sir, your knowledge and tenacity is amazingly impressive. Abdullah, that's exactly why we've got Comrade Menzi on with us today. So, I mean, a couple of questions that I was going to ask, we've already answered. Your thoughts on the no-fault injection schemes. Do you believe Big Pharma has captured our government? Asked and answered.
Absolutely.
Comrade Menzi, unless there's anything you want to add there before we start rounding up.
I wanted to add that part, there was no valid public consent, and which constitutes basically a violation of human rights, right? So what do you do if human rights are being violated, and they're being violated as usual by the powers that be? Where is our how do we cry out for help, and how do we demand our rights back? It's just, for me. Okay, let me answer it like this. We had an engagement with Abashali, not Abashali, with the hostel dwellers organization the other day, and one of the leaders asked a very crucial question. He was very convinced that IVM seems like a great medication in this pandemic. After our conversation, I could tell that no, he was convinced, but also he had been doing some research. I realized Hostel Dwellers Association. I forgot the right name, and then he asked a question about what does WHO have to say? What does the WHO have to say about this? After we explained basically the stance of SAPRA, that SAPRA basically is going back and forth on their own words, re-energizing on their own words. One time they're saying ivermectin is approved to be used immediately. It said it was also an order by the High Court in the Gauteng Pretoria Court on the 2nd of February. But then, after we had spoken about SAPRA and explained to him the intricacies of SAPRA, or not the intricacies, the hypocrisies of SAPRA, he asked about the WHO. But then I pointed out to him, I just opened the website of the WHO, who also were saying that ivermectin can be used, right, with the doctor's approval. But at the same time, they keep throwing in these words like inconclusive evidence. So they cannot say that this thing does not work. It cannot come out of their mouth. there is no PR that they can use to say that IVM does not work. But at the same time, they have to throw in some doubt. They have to use words like inconclusive. It's actually on the first sentence. You see, they are very clever. On the first sentence of they write that even though there is inconclusive evidence, but we know that it has been used for this, and it's effective for COVID-19. So,
well, technically, we're not allowed to say that. We're not allowed to say. YouTube has just come out with new laws. It's written on their website. YouTube has just come out and say you can't say that it's effective. You can't recommend it. Otherwise, we're going to take down all of your content. No warning. I know a journalist that had 14,000 videos taken down.
So I must watch my words. Each time I try to speak the truth, I must actually withhold it. Okay, I understand.
This is why we use injection, and this is why we say vitamin I.
Okay.
Yeah. Michael Smith says people should start moving to label CR as captured. Google sanitizes info. Other search engines have the peer review cases. Other search engines like DuckDuckGo, rather than using Google, is a better way of getting to
smart use of technology is very important.
Yes, very much so. People are so brainwashed. They'll say, "But I Googled it, and this is what I found." And then you got to ask, "But you used Google, didn't you?"
Google is Google,
and that's why Google is Google, right? Last two questions before we let you go, and you've touched on a lot of this already, but where to from here, and how can people support THJ?
I've already said it a little bit, how you can support us, but I think, well, we have a campaign. You can basically, first and foremost, join us on the Sahari group, become a member. What do we call it? Like and become a member, subscribe. What's the right word? Please help me. And then there is this. How do we share that campaign? How do we share? It's on Facebook. I've shared it amongst 1,000 people. Sign the petition, basically.
Sign the
because
petition.
There are various campaigns. There are various different campaigns, but the petition. If you sign the petition, the good thing about this petition, if you open the site, the change.org, go to change.org, and we'll share. Can we share it on the? Where can we share it actually on this platform right now? Should I share it on my?
Rana shared it. Rana. Yeah. Please share. Yeah.
Okay. So a couple of people, hundreds of people have signed. We are aiming for 500 more. But if you sign the petition, the good thing about it is that it's got information in it that is relevant for right now, for this week, and next week, because you have 5 days to, object to this nonsense. So there's a whole lot of information. If you go into our petition, even before you sign it, please read what it says, and then you'll be informed. And basically just support Sahari, the company, the I can't even say the I word again. I wanted to say it, but I can't say it. But yeah, support Sahari. Support us.
Things are insane.
Share information.
We want to watch the isiZulu translation of the promo called Set IV Free before we start saying goodbye. So a couple of comments here. Rana Tirza Naidu says, as one of the persons behind the scenes, I see how easy it is to say what we want on these platforms. But putting this together is not easy. We need people to aid us with campaigning, funding. Funding gives us a strong platform to fight for our health needs.
Oh, yes. Very important.
She said some very nice things about me there.
Yes, money.
About which one?
Money.
Yes.
We are fighting against people who have unlimited resources. So you can support us by donating on our campaign. Just go to our FB sites there. I think information is there on the THJ Sahari sites. Just go there. Whatever resources you have, please just support us on that level. It's very important.
Please.
Because it's becoming our work is becoming a daily. It's taking up a lot of time. So we need to eat. But we are not doing it to eat. We have our other jobs so that we can eat. But in order to fund our work, please donate.
Please
Donate your
donate,
time, donate your
contribute, get
resources.
involved.
Yeah,
Exactly.
print our
Your
flyers and
skills.
share with other people. Print our
Yes.
flyers and share with other people. Read it, understand what's going on in the flyer, understand the information, and then distribute it within your family and your community.
Absolutely. Rana has made a very impassioned plea to support me there, Rana, and I will not be able to read it in as much as I very much appreciate what you've just said. Thank you very much for that, Rana Teresa Naidu. Rana Teresa Naidu, of course, working very hard on our website and has been a committed member of Sahari THJ from the beginning. Couple of more comments, and it's Tesna Aston, inconclusive and anecdotal. They're talking about the WHO's attitude. Marina Muhlberg Smith, that whole lot are shameful, all in the name of health. Aziz Idris, YouTube is freezing you. Wow, guys, it's chilly where we are right now, not frozen yet. Varushka shared the petition link again. Remember, go to change.org. Don't ask who owns that platform, by the way. Look for the petition, make all vaccine deals public in South Africa, and sign and share. Marina Muhlberg. But thank you, Shabnam and Menzi. Respect to you both and to you, Marina. Let's have a look at the isiZulu translation for Set IV Free. This is the promo. There's a whole series to go. And if you can, please contribute to us making the series. Your name or your business name will be included in the credits. Wouldn't that be amazing? I mean, it's going around the world. Absolutely brilliant. Let's see if we've got the right one here. That could be it. All right, so that's not isiZulu, that's actually French. isiZulu didn't upload, but we'll get to it while you watch. This is the English version. You can actually, because you translated it. Have a look, let's have a look. All right, so we are uploading the isiZulu. I tried to do it before we started, but you know, the technology is fun and games. Speaking of which, if you can contribute towards the costs of streaming software, that would enable us to be able to reach more platforms. And I think we'll be able to circumvent the system. People that want to know how to help, that's how you can do it. Menzi Maseko has also shared the change.org.
They can also help us to fund our what do you call it? The animation. We have a lot of we have animators, but animation costs a lot. So there are some costs going towards. And animation is a very great, effective tool for sharing information that would take a lot of pages, but you can share it in an image. So donate to THJ for that, please, to fund our animation project.
The script is amazing. Yes, the script is amazing, Menzi.
Yes.
The script is absolutely amazing. It's such a brilliant story, telling the story of vitamin I, but also this global campaign and what we want to happen, which is people-centered healthcare. Unfortunately, this video is taking forever to upload,
it's okay.
but we will be able to share it across our various platforms so that you can spread the word. The more people know, the more lives can be saved. So thank you everyone for joining us on the weekly Sahari THJ Live. And thank you especially to THJ Director Menzi Maseko for joining us today. Let's see if there's any last comments before we say goodbye. Varushka okay, no, we read that one already. Let's see, are we missing anything? Varushka Somamemda, thank you, dear humanitarians. Together we shall conquer. Tesna Aston, if each of us on Sahari THJ donated 50 Rand, that will be enough to sustain the campaign for a while. Absolutely, Tesna. We may be able to go to court as well when we need to. I must tell you, Comrade Menzi, I approached a firm of attorneys regarding vitamin I, and they said, sorry, we can't get involved because we advise the government on the injections. Imagine that. It's seen as a conflict of conflict of interest.
So people are actually not looking for a
touch.
solution. People are not looking for a solution. It's very clear. They're not looking for a solution. They're looking for a diversion. It's sad. The less said, the better.
Yeah.
I'm closing my books.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Get involved, people. Keep supporting us. Share this broadcast. And remember, like we always say, whenever we speak, that the power of the people
is stronger than the people in power. The power of the people is stronger than the people in power. Know that.
Remember that. It's not just me you're hearing saying it. It's Menzi Maseko, and he says it so well. Take care, everybody. We will be seeing you tomorrow. And this is Africa and Sunday's edition of the People's Voice. Take care, stay healthy, and good night. Goodbye.
Mubarak.